Section 3. Russian Revolutions of 1917. Introduction. In this study section, you will learn about Russian revolutions. To understand the Russian Revolution of 1917 in proper perspective and dimension, it is necessary to comprehend the relationship among the Russian Tsars, nobles, and serfs. It will also be proper to examine the roles of external factors. Learning outcomes. When you have studied this section, you should be able to describe the tyranny of the successive Russian Tsars as the poor foundation of Russian society. Discuss the roles of external factors in the eventual outbreak of the 1917 revolution. Explain the circumstances responsible for the taking over of power by the Bolshevik regime. Background to Bolshevik Revolution. Internal issues. Tyranny of Russian Tsars before 1917. The Russian serfs suffered in the hands of the successive Russian rulers. They were poverty-stricken from the time of Tsar Peter the Great, 1689 to 1725. The serfs had been subjected to severe conditions up till the outbreak of the revolution in 1917. They were maltreated politically, economically, and socially. The use of secret police was characteristic of the successive administrations of the Tsars in Russia. Political agitators were dealt with, press censorship was common practice, and those believed to be anti-Tsarism were sent on exile to Siberia. Majority of the serfs drifted to the urban centers to join other discontented groups to promote unrest, which finally led to the abdication of Tsar Nicholas II in 1917. The roles of the nobles. The nobles or landowners also contributed to the outbreak of the revolution. They collaborated with the successive monarchs to put the serfs in perpetual servitude. In fact, the nobles ensured that all reforms and attempts to liberate them were obstructed. A typical example was the way the landowners manipulated the Edict of Emancipation of 1861 in such a way that the edict brought discontentment to the serfs rather than liberation. The resultant effect of industrialization. In the last quarter of the 19th century, the Russian population increased tremendously and economic conditions turned from bad to worse. To solve some of the major economic problems, such as poverty and unemployment, the Tsarist government launched a new program of industrialization. The government borrowed large sums of money from the industrially advanced European countries and USA. Though it provided jobs for many unemployed as well as the emergence of modern industry, in the long run it created other serious problems such as exploitation of labor and poor standard of living. Subsequently, workers demanded better working conditions, better wages, access to land, right to form trade union organizations, as well as share in governance. Background to Bolshevik Revolution. External factors. External factors contributed immensely to the outbreak of the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917. These external factors include the American Revolution 1776 to 1783, the French Revolution 1789, the defeat of Russia in Crimean War 1854 to 1856, the defeat of Russia in the Russo-Japanese War 1904 to 1905, and the outbreak of the First World War. Let's briefly see how the defeat of Russia in Crimean War 1854 to 1856. Russia suffered defeat in the Crimean War as a result of the weak, ineffective, and autocratic rule of Tsar Nicholas I. Consequently, the defeat damaged the military prestige of Russia and equally undermined her influence in Europe. In fact, it has been argued by scholars that the shock of the defeat led to the untimely death of Nicholas I in 1855. The defeat of Russia in Russo-Japanese War 1904 to 1905. It will be recalled that both Russia and Japan were rivals in Manchuria and the Far East. This unhealthy rivalry led to war and eventual defeat of Russia. As a result, discontentment considerably increased against the system of government in Russia. It led to the killings of government officials, including Leville, the Minister of Interior, and Grand Duke Sergius, the Tsar's brother. Circumstances responsible for Bolshevik regime in 1917 revolutions in Russia. There were two revolutions in Russia in 1917. The first revolution was the February 1917, and the second one occurred in October 1917. The February 1917 revolution was led by Prince Lvov and Kerensky, while the October 1917 revolution was led by Vladimir Lenin, Stalin, and Leon Trotsky. February 1917 revolution. By 1914, there were over 3 million workers in Russia and a developed class between the Russian capitalists and the workers, and this paved way for revolution. The workers consistently demanded for better wages, better working conditions, and for the right of trade union organization, as well as a share in government. Thus, workers embarked on strikes that promoted anarchy and unrest in Russia. October 1917 revolution. In 1917, the Communist Party, otherwise referred to as the Party of the Communists, became known as the Russian Social Democratic Party, RSDLP. Members of the party were known as Bolsheviks under the leadership of Lenin. Lenin set forth the task of the Bolshevik Party in the realm of economic relations, such as confiscation of landed estates, nationalization of all the land, among others. Though the Mensheviks protested against Lenin's reforms, but the decision of the provisional government to continue the war with Germany was the last straw that broke the camel's back. It will be recalled that the masses already were dissatisfied with the bourgeoisie policies of the provisional government. Besides, the guidelines offered by Lenin and his party attracted the masses. Thus, Russians wanted peace, land, bread, and freedom, and only in Bolsheviks seemed ready to grant these popular demands of the people. On July 13, 1917, there was a serious demonstration in Petrograd, and the demonstration culminated into armed attack on the provisional government. The Bolsheviks advanced the slogan, "All power to the Soviets." Finally, on October 26, 1917, by force of arms, the provisional government was arrested and the minister-president A.F. Kerensky fled the country under the cover of the American flag, only to mobilize forces against the Bolsheviks. The effort to suppress the new government failed. This was how the Russian Social Democratic Labour Party, RSDLP, of the Bolsheviks took over the control of Russia's administration. Study section summary. In this study section, you have learned that 1. Tyranny and oppressive rule of successive Russian Tsars before 1917 laid the foundation for the outbreak of revolution in 1917. 2. The nobles frustrated several attempts made to emancipate the serfs in Russia. 3. Industrialization attracted the poor to the cities and eventually led to the growth of political movements and trade unions. 4. External factors such as the Crimean War, Russo-Japanese War, and the First World War contributed to the outbreak of the 1917 revolution. 5. Bolsheviks were responsible for the eventual fall of the provisional government in October 26, 1917 revolution. This is the end of Studies Section 3. Thanks for listening.